A conversation with Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, on justice, humanity, conflict and legacy. Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, is a trailblazing pioneer in the justice system and in the history of television. In 1982, Sheindlin, then a prosecutor in the New York City Family Court, was appointed to the bench by Mayor Edward I. Koch. She became supervising judge of the Manhattan Court in 1986 and heard more than 20,000 cases. Her outspoken, no-nonsense jurisprudence and open court policy became the subject of a Los Angeles Times profile in February 1993, caught the attention of 60 Minutes, and eventually led to her presiding over a courtroom in her own TV program, Judge Judy, which premiered in 1996. For over 25 years, Judge Judy has been watched by more than 1 in 3 Americans every year, and licensed in over 100 international territories. Beyond her own show, Judge Sheindlin and her Queen Bee Productions company have created new television franchises including Hot Bench, one of the highest-rated programs in daytime television. For her TV career she has won several Daytime Emmy Awards, been honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and been inducted into the prestigious Broadcasting and Cable Hall of Fame. She has also been feted with an Emmy Award for Lifetime Achievement. Judge Sheindlin is a prominent philanthropist, having given significant gifts to the University of Southern California, and most recently, to her alma mater, New York Law School. At NYLS, the Judge Judy Sheindlin Honors Program was established to support women in the legal profession. Additionally, along with her daughter, Nicole Sheindlin, she founded her Honor Mentoring, an initiative that combines the power of youth and wisdom, mentoring hundreds of young women. Currently, she is the presiding judge on Judy Justice, on IMDb TV, Amazon's free streaming service, available both in the United States and the UK. New episodes are seen weekdays. In this interview, I speak to Judge Sheindlin on the concept of justice, on humanity, conflict, success and legacy. Q. What does justice mean to you? Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, the question of what justice means depends on the audience witnessing the process. It could be the litigants, or the people watching courtroom television, for whom it may be entertainment. When we talk about the litigants, there's rarely gray areas in a case, it's black or white. There is a degree of laziness and political correctness which has crept into the justice system. Many judges are appointed, not elected. They don't want to offend. Instead of making a decision, they cut the baby in half, and everyone is left being a little bit miserable. I don't like to cut the baby in half, and while I can certainly see more gray areas in the world, my job as a judge is to say, you're right, and you're wrong. I think people get frustrated by what they see as a lack of justice in this country, and sometimes watching my show gives them the opportunity to see justice in action. So, if you're a litigant, you want an answer, and the public need to know that whether you're in small claims court, civil court or criminal court, where actual freedom is at stake, that the victim can be assured justice through the application of a punishment, incarceration or penalty. People want to see a just outcome. Q. How important is the human connection between a judge and those in the courtroom? Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, when I was a prosecutor in the family court, there was a judge who was a very smart man, and who didn't want to offend anyone. His mission was to show everyone in the courtroom how smart he was, and often this led him to make a decision that nobody was really happy with. I was a prosecutor, and the young man he was sentencing was facing a period of detention in a juvenile facility. When he finished sentencing, he looked at this young man and said, "This period in your life is going to have a very prophylactic effect." He was saying this to a 14-year-old street kid from Manhattan, who turned to me and said, "What's a prophylactic? Is it a condom?" This kid didn't know if they were going to throw him a party or throw him in jail. In that moment, I decided that if I ever got to be in that position, I would make sure that if I was going to send you to jail, that you would know that it was because you did a bad thing, and there should be no uncertainty in your mind of that. Another situation involved a female judge who certainly didn't belong on the family court bench. She was not inclined to empathize with the kids that she was dealing with. She was a Harvard-educated lawyer, came from a white shoe law firm, and was sentencing a 15-year-old girl to detention. The girl started to cry as soon as she understood the sentence, and the judge said to her, "Please stop crying, I know exactly how you feel. When I was 15, my parents sent me to Paris, and I didn't want to go." What planet was this woman from? Honestly, you couldn't make it up. I sat in the family courts for 10 years before I became a judge there. I came to understand that even if you work hard, you can only change a small percentage of ingrained behavior. You break a sweat, you do what you do, you make calls, you shout at people, you threaten people to do the right thing, not litigants, but agencies who service the court. You must be prepared to do that in the family court. If not, go to the surrogate court. My role as a judge is to make sure that to the best of my ability, the right outcome happens in a case, and parties understand what the outcome is, and that my decision is not based on anything woke or politically correct, but is based on the facts I see before me, and the people performing in the courtroom. Q. How did you deal with lack of humanity you witnessed in the family courts? Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, how did I deal with the lack of humanity I saw? Firstly, by taking 6 Tylenol a day. Laughs. As each year passed during my time in the courts, my eyes were further opened to the awful things people can do to children. Cases involving the abuse of children is part of the role of a family court judge. I couldn't imagine the kind of person that would take a cigarette and put it on a 3-year-old child's back because they wet the bed. I can't imagine taking a baby and putting their hands and feet in boiling water because they soiled their pants. It was hard for me to imagine that such humans existed, and if truth be told, I don't think that kind of human should be allowed to exist. While there may be reasons for bad behavior, perhaps upbringing, perhaps a history of childhood abuse and trauma, perhaps a lack of attention as a child, perhaps the wrong schooling. The fact is that society cannot accept that as an excuse. Society must demand that you comport yourself within a framework of rules. Once those rules break, society breaks down. Q. What did you learn about conflict resolution through your time as a judge? Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, there is an implication in conflict resolution that sane people should be able to come together and make the right things happen for their family, community, city, state, or camp. When you're involved in conflict, you're not sane. You may start out being sane, and in those early stages it's certainly possible to mediate and arbitrate. Using those tools, arbitration and mediation, you often end up cutting the baby in half. You give a little, I give a little, you give a little more, I give a little more, and suddenly everyone is miserable. This process leads to a situation where even if there is a clear right and wrong answer, you have to give up certain things. How can that be the just route? Let's look at the greatest manifestation of conflict, war. If we look at the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, there is no question about who the aggressor is. Given the high stakes, diplomacy is essential, negotiations are essential. We're talking about potential nuclear conflict, and that must be avoided at all costs. Even in this case, where there was clearly only one aggressor, the victim will likely have to give up something that they really shouldn't have to, for the sake of the greater good. In a case where there are potentially catastrophic consequences, it feels okay to make that compromise, but in the family court where you are dealing with abuse and neglect, with children committing violent, terrible, criminal acts, there's a right and wrong answer. When you attempt to mediate, you're softening the noose, and when rules become softened, society can break. It's fair to say that life felt more secure 40 years ago. You felt safer in your home, on the streets, in school, you just felt safer. If people suggest that humanity is becoming less human, it's because we've allowed civilized conduct to deteriorate, and that's what I've fought against for my entire professional career and continue to fight against today. There are many reasons people commit bad acts, and while it's important to study those individuals to understand them and understand society, we can study those things out of harm's way, in ways that don't hurt anyone. The reasons, however, cannot be an excuse to forgive and to change rules. If we're going to change the laws, we should only do so to make society safer. Q. What does success mean to you? Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, I've always tried to always do the right thing. I've said to my children, and grandchildren, that if you do the right thing, there's no guarantee that the right thing will happen. That's the way of the world. If you do the wrong thing, however, you'll face karma. If you do the wrong thing, at some point in your life, something bad is going to happen to you. Remember my words. It will happen because you did something wrong 20 years ago to a colleague, to a girlfriend, to a boyfriend, to someone. If you do wrong, something bad will happen to you. You will get caught. You will get brought to task. You will get punished. If you did something wrong, and something bad then happens to you, you deserved it. Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, I witnessed the death of my own mother over 40 years ago. She died very young and was an absolute angel. I adored her. She was a pure person, and as she was dying, she said to me, I try to think of what I did in my life that made God so angry with me. She came up with some tiny thing and was convinced it was that. I said, don't be so ridiculous. In that moment, even someone as good and pure as my mother was wondering what she could have done to have angered whomever so much. I took that as a lesson to impart to my own kids and planted a seed with them, so they try and do the right thing, every day. Q. How did philanthropy come into your life? Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, many years ago, when I first became a judge, I was on a tour of a town in Texas. The sheriff was taking me around, showing me their new state-of-the-art juvenile facility, and it was honestly really fabulous. They'd poured a lot of money into this facility and the kids who were sent there had access to computers, a swimming pool, basketball court, and clean, pleasant shared rooms. On the way back to the airport, we passed this decrepit-looking building with grass growing out between the bricks, and no air conditioning. It was an elementary school. It illustrated the point that's often made, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, nobody notices you when you're trying to do the right thing. 16 years ago, I started a mentoring program for first-generation school kids who were trying to do the right thing. Nobody was paying attention to them. I wanted to make sure we helped them get the same support that middle-class educated parents gave to their kids, helping them get a summer job, helping them write their personal statement for college, all the things I had the luxury of in a middle-class family, and which many young women in particular weren't able to get. They were swimming upstream. We now have young women who started out as mentees when they were 17 years old, who are coming back as mentors having graduated college and landing good jobs. That's full circle. That's legacy. I've now expanded that support to include the law school I went to. So many young women would really love to go to law school, but can't afford that kind of financial burden. Many of them are burdened with school loans that they won't be able to pay off until they're ready to retire. The gift I've made will ensure that at least 10 young women every year will have the ability to go to law school, and not be burdened for doing so. Q. What does legacy mean to you? Judge Judith Sheindlin, Judge Judy, I've had a successful career as a prosecutor in the family court, as a judge in the family court, as a supervising judge, and was given the rare opportunity to be a judge on television. My television career went successfully, and after a quarter of a century, I've been able to move on to another fabulous opportunity successfully. She is the presiding judge on Judy Justice, seen on IMDb TV, Amazon's free streaming service both in the United States and now, the UK. That's my professional legacy, and I'm immensely proud of that. More than that, however, I have a family, a mate, children, and grandchildren. When we're together over Thanksgiving, there were 22 of us at dinner every night for 9 days. Fortunately for them, and for me, I wasn't cooking. That's part of my footprint, my legacy. I think when people say my name, whether they like me or not, they'll say that I always spoke the truth. It may not be everyone's truth, but it was mine.